all we compared. In fact, the comparison is one of the basic tasks of thought. When we are young, we learn to know the world by comparison. While we compare, we get a more accurate around us idea. However, the problem starts when we compare ourselves with others and realize value judgments, which ended up dismissing us. Then the inferiority complex arises and we feel smaller and miserable than others, less valuable and capable than others. What is the inferiority complex? The inferiority complex designates a person who has low self-esteem and permanent feeling of not being up to others. This categorization is based on the ideas of Adler, for which there were two types of inferiority complex, primary inferiority complex. In this case, the origin can be traced back to childhood, when the child experiences feelings of weakness, helplessness and dependency. Later these feelings can be reinforced by negative comparisons with siblings, classmates or even romantic couples. Secondary inferiority complex. In this case, the source is in adulthood and is linked to the feeling, often unconscious, of being unable to achieve security and success. The person experiences negative feelings about their ability, and feel inferior to others, whom he considers safe and successful people. However, whatever the time in which it arose, the inferiority complex is based on an overgeneralization, in no rational judgments about ourselves. This misconception is based both in our minds, that ends influencing our lives, and in the image we have of ourselves. Why the inferiority complex appears. Most people who have inferiority complex to think that this failing is due, often physical, or because they are not competent enough in certain respects. But actually that's the excuse. The inferiority complex arises not only by the difference, but by the inability to properly manage the difference. It is not diversity, but our interpretation of that difference, which creates an inferiority complex. In fact, you may find people who also have this defect, disability, weakness or special feature and have not developed an inferiority complex but are confident. Some people can take advantage of this defect course learning to be more resilient, but others focus on the negative impact and end up exacerbating the problem, letting this the limit. In this sense, Henry Seedling said, while a person does not try because he feels inferior, another is busy making mistakes and slowly improving. Obviously, this way of dealing with the difference depends largely on our beliefs, many of which were transmitted in childhood. For example, if we think that a person can only be successful if you have managed to accumulate possessions and money, it is likely to feel failures and lower if we could not do it. If we think that to be happy you need to be physically perfect, we be obsessed with appearance and any small defect may be a reason for an inferiority complex. People who have developed a black and white thinking, all or nothing, are also more likely to be underestimated, because they are not able to appreciate the different shades of life. These people, when compared with others, often focus on the negative and almost always end up feeling inadequate or disadvantaged. The danger of overcompensation. Some people, when they feel inferior, they act as if they really were, so they end up reaffirming the low opinion of themselves. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They also tend to isolate themselves from others, because they think that everyone will notice your default and scoff at their backs. In some cases they may even develop fears or phobias. They become dependent people, who need someone stronger at his side, to provide them with permanent emotional support. In other cases, people with the inferiority complex react unconsciously, activating a mechanism overcompensation. That is, they try to compensate for the default, considering a goal almost impossible to achieve that obsesses them and ends up causing more problems. In fact, it is important to distinguish between compensation and overcompensation. Offsetting simply means developing some resources to compensate for a deficiency. In this case, the person is aware of the problem and works to compensate, enhancing other skills and competencies. Overcompensation goes a step further. It's wanting to feel superior. People who implement a mechanism of overcompensation often show extreme behavior, try to excel in some areas by any means, projecting a false image of security. For example, a man with an inferiority complex associated with masculinity can react with misogynistic attitudes that devalue women. Another problem of overcompensation is that normally occurs at an unconscious level. That is, the person does not agree that on the basis of these extreme behaviors actually a feeling of inferiority hides. Obviously, in this way it ends up sinking into a vicious cycle that does not allow it to grow. In fact, although these people achieve certain results or even excel in certain areas of life, they never get to feel better, because it does not exceed the inferiority complex that lies at the base. How to overcome the inferiority complex? Repeat it 1,000 times before the mirror positive statements is useless. In fact, a study by psychologists at the universities of California and Yale indicates that people who have low self-esteem feel worse when phrases like "I totally agree" or "I will succeed" are repeated. And it is not so easy to deceive himself. Overcome the inferiority complex demand a much deeper physiological level work. 1. Determine what you feel inferior. The first step to solving a problem is knowing that there is, and making conscious that difficulty. If you have a complex, find that part of you that do not like. 2. Appreciates the extent of the damage. The inferiority complex usually starts by a deficiency, weakness or defect but gradually spreads to your whole personality. Rate this feeling how it has affected your life. This is not to look for reasons to be depressed, but understand how this complex has limited you. 3. Start thinking in terms of diversity. Be less about something that implies a comparison, which often used to rigid patterns. Instead of comparing yourself with others, it would be begin to see life in terms of diversity. It's not about being better or worse, but just to highlight what makes us unique and different. 4. Focus on what you can improve. Mourn over spilled milk is counterproductive. We all have weaknesses and limitations. If we cannot go further in some fields, it is best to focus on those areas where we can shine. Of course, we must not become obsessed with it, to compensate for a default, but simply to find satisfaction and happiness. Remember that you do not have to prove anything to anyone, just have to make sure to develop the skills that make you happy. 5. Be yourself. In a society where everything is standardized and homogenized, it is normal that many people feel bad if they perceive they are different. However, what is really illogical to pretend to be equal to others, because this way you are killing your identity and even your value as a person. Look inside yourself, discover who you are and dare to be different. Finally, remember that you do not really need much to be happy. When you discover who you are, you will notice that many of the things you craved were superficial or utopian. You will realize that you do not need those things to be happy, because happiness and satisfaction does not come from outside but from within.